Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of a man.
I'm Tommy Summons. This is Year Zero. Today, Carr Campett of Timeline Earth joins me. I asked Carr to come on the show because there have been a lot of disputes about how Bitcoin and ESG interact and can cancel out each other, etc., etc. Carr spends a lot of his time in the Bitcoin community. That's really where his focus lies. So I wanted Carr to come on and explain to me why he has no concern about ESG and thinks Bitcoin is the answer. We don't debate, we just talk because we're friends and I don't see any point in it. Carr may find that he is wrong in some areas. I may find I am wrong in some areas, and we'll make adjustments as necessary. But there's no reason for us to be at each other's throats because I don't have his knowledge and he doesn't have mine. And that's just the way it is. RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a wannabe libertarian and a wannabe anarcho-capitalist. He also wants to be a business owner that is not exclusively, but professional at graphic design. Help his dreams come true. Let Ryan Bunting be the libertarian anarcho-capitalist that designs your art. That's what you need, is to help retards' dreams come true. So, RyanBunting.com if you want to help this retard out. RyanBunting.com. LibertarianInstitute.org is where you'll find all the best shows. Me, Kyle Anzalone, with Conflicts of Interest. Liberty Weekly with Patrick McFarlane. Keith Knight, Don't Tread on Anyone. Scott Horton Show. And a bunch of great writers, including Patrick McFarlane, sometimes myself. I'll sit down with the keyboard every once in a while. Kim Davidson and Jim Bovard, sometimes Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams. Lots of great writers over there at the LibertarianInstitute.org. So check it out. Will Porter's there. That might be a catch. That might pull you right in to the LibertarianInstitute.org. So, LibertarianInstitute.org, that's where you want to go to see what's going on. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Enjoy the show. All right. I'm here with Mr. Carr Campett. What's going on, dude?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah, no doubt. I wanted to talk to you after I was on with Buck on Counterflow. Somebody had made a comment that I needed to learn more about Bitcoin, and I will be the first one to admit that I do not read much on Bitcoin. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I do own some, but I'm just not like really dug into it like someone like you is. So I figured, fuck it, let's talk about this because I want to know how ESG is going to affect the financial market. Is pretty obvious to me. Like I can see how that's going to work, but I want to know how Bitcoin is going to guard against that, because I think there are some things that even if Bitcoin can't, like even if you can protect yourself via Bitcoin, that there are things that people need to be aware of that maybe they're not aware of, that they're not looking at, that might be important to kind of take into consideration when making the preparations. And it's not the fact of owning Bitcoin. A lot of it is the fact of buying Bitcoin. So I kind of wanted to get into that. So my thing is, if you look at like the trucker protest, right, in Canada, all these people were donating Bitcoin. And so after the government started freezing bank accounts, people started donating Bitcoin, and the government contacted these third party companies, which I understand, like owning your own bank account versus having your own bank versus using a third party. Fact of the matter is, a lot of people are just going to use a third party because that's what they're used to and that's the way they operate, which is going to cause issues for a lot of people. So what happened was the government got in contact with these third party providers, these processors, and basically leaned on them to freeze the Bitcoin accounts. So what can people do in this situation to kind of protect themselves? Because you had told me about getting a Raspberry Pi and setting up, running your own node and things like that a while back. So how is that somewhat a way to protect themselves from ending up with their Bitcoin being frozen out and not being able to
100%.
it?
100%. That's all you have to do. I mean, that's the solution is so easy. You don't even need to get a Raspberry Pi. You can just run Bitcoin Core pruned in the background of whatever laptop you have, and control the private keys to the Bitcoin that you own, and you're done. It's simple. That is why Bitcoiners have been saying that over and over and over again for years and years and years, and people find it annoying. And then we get to a trucker protest, and everybody's like, "Oh wow, I can't use my Bitcoin." Well, you didn't actually have any Bitcoin. You had an IOU from a third-party service that said you had Bitcoin. God knows if they even had the Bitcoin that correlates with that IOU. So, you need to, and it doesn't even, for small amounts. Now, I always recommend running your own node because that is going to be ultimately a way for you to, without asking permission from anyone else, really connect to the Bitcoin network. But, even if the truckers had SPV wallet, like just mobile wallets on their phone, it would have been better than the current circumstance where people were just trying to transfer stuff on Coinbase or whatever the case may be. Even that mobile wallet where you control the private keys to the Bitcoin that you own, even in that scenario, like it at least adds a layer of complexity if they want to freeze your Bitcoin, because they have to figure out what nodes or what servers that mobile Bitcoin wallet is pointed to. So, like, for example, if I don't know if this is the case, like, let's just say a third party, like a Coinbase or a Coinbase similar service also had a wallet app where you could download the private keys, or you could download an app and then quote unquote control your private keys. But if that's still pointed back at Coinbase servers, then they could still, it's a step better than Coinbase explicitly owning your private keys. But if the wallet's headed right back to a third party server, then, they could lean on them there. So that's why it's like, run your own node. I mean, it's just very, very simple. Bitcoin Core is incredibly easy to use. It controls your keys and it allows you to talk to the network without asking permission. It's an incredibly powerful tool that's very, very simple.
So if they would have had like a Edge wallet or something like that, it would have been better. They would have been better off.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah. Not that I'm recommending Edge. I'm just saying, like, I don't know what Edge is specifically, but I would assume that you would have your private keys. So I don't know what Edge wallet is, but I would imagine that yes, they would be in a better shape.
Yeah, no, I was just using that as an example because it's something I've used. So do you think that there's a Coinbase problem, or I don't know what all companies were involved in this. I didn't pay that close of attention to get into detail on which companies were doing what. I do remember hearing about Coinbase. So do you think this is unique to companies like Coinbase? Because I know there are companies like Uphold, right, where you can purchase gold stock, you can purchase other currencies, like other countries' currencies, you can purchase a bunch of different types of cryptocurrencies, and you can get a debit card that you can use as like any banking debit card. So basically you could be spending ruples or the yuan or Bitcoin or whatever by swiping your debit card and choosing what you're spending. So do you know anything about that Uphold program, that Uphold system? Would that be as bad as Coinbase, or is that something that's a little more secure?
I don't know anything about Uphold, but it ultimately isn't about security. It's about the fact that there's a counterparty.
Yeah.
That's the issue, right? I mean, they got leaned on by the government and they folded. Right. And so what are you going to, how are you going to avoid third parties is the question, not which third party is better.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because like part of my problem is like when you look at like Visa or MasterCard or any of these things, these people are in bed with this ESG agenda, and they are playing along with this shit, and that's why that's what they're doing, which I find so horrible, is they're utilizing the financial institutions to leverage against the American people. Mm-hmm. And so I've said it several times, but the way it's put is Klaus Schwab says that the financial institutions have the carrot to make the corporations move, right?
Yeah.
So it's a carrot and stick situation. And so if the corporations move in a specific direction, the customer base is going to move along with them, because the customer base needs to get these products. So it's a top-down scenario that's made to look like it's bottom up, and it's run by private institutions by utilizing the financial institutions. So you take like a situation like what was Stripe kicking Alex Jones off of their platform, right? Uh-huh. Something like that. You're going to end up with these situations. Visa and MasterCard are also, doing these types of things. We've had banks cancel Donald Trump's bank accounts, and he's got money. It's debatable how much, but we know he has money. So I look at that and I'm like, well, if they can do it to these people, and it's like any other situation, if they start doing it to the worst people and everybody's silent about it, then they can just kind of work their way through, right? Mm-hmm. And what are you going to do about it? By the time they get to you, who's going to be there to help defend you?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is don't use financial institutions that are, or at least minimize your exposure to financial institutions that they have control over, and certainly don't save in them. So, I mean, that's why I just don't really even know that much about ESGs, because I just don't care. I mean, I would need to see a viable attack vector from them on the Bitcoin network for me to start to really spend a lot of time investigating it. Otherwise, I would rather spend my time being productive and saving more Bitcoin in, my local currency. So, I don't know. I'm sure that they will be trying to pull levers and whenever you talk about Bitcoin, you have to take it from two different perspectives. You have to take it from the individual soft target that owns Bitcoin, you or me or some small company or whatever, and then the Bitcoin network as a whole. Can they affect individual meat bags like you and me? Perhaps. Can they affect the network? I'm dubious. So I would need to see some clear evidence that they would, or what their attack vectors would be on the network that would make me worry. And then as far as I'm concerned, as an individual within that network, my goal for a long time now has been just trying to find more and more of my goods and services providers that provide and will take Bitcoin, right? So that I close that loop off.
And is there a large amount of people starting to provide services and goods for Bitcoin?
Oh yeah,
there are.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That has anybody put together like a comprehensive list of who you can purchase from using Bitcoin?
I'm sure people have tried, and I don't know if there's. I would be shocked if there weren't attempts out there. Just the nature of basically any web service, any reputable web service, like if you want to pay for VPN or hosting or anything like that, you'll be able to buy in Bitcoin. And then other than that, most of the stuff that I buy monetarily, or by amount spent, I guess would be spent locally. So I would be looking to local goods and service providers and asking them if, to take Bitcoin, which I have done. So, I guess that's kind of a roundabout way to answer your question. I'm not really sure if there's a one-stop shop to say, oh, here, where do I get this? Where do I get that? But there are some pretty major retailers that do accept Bitcoin, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah, because one of my things is habits are very difficult to break, right? I mean, I'm 42 years old, and it's hard for me to imagine utilizing Bitcoin in any other way other than a savings account, which is kind of what I do. And so I can only imagine somebody like my parents. My parents won't even touch it. They're like, it doesn't even make any sense to me. Like, I don't understand it. And so I look at it and I'm like, it would be really helpful to move forward the network if people were putting forth that kind of work for kind of the normie audience to absorb and understand, like, okay, we can use this because you got this threat of the central bank digital currency coming down the pike, and they're right there. They're close. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get caught up in this racket, and it's going to cause a lot of issues. They're talking about not even doing a 1-for-1 transfer, and that they're going to depend it on your history, your race, your gender. Like, all these things are going to come into effect. And so you might have a straight white male that only gets 70 cents to the dollar conversion rate to the CBDC, whereas you have a black, trans, queer, whatever school teacher that gets $1.20 to $1 in conversion ratio. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to the CBDC and the possibilities that are floating around that. And a lot of that hovers around the ESG kind of metrics that they're using. So I would be very helpful if there was a place that people could find this type of information.
Yeah, one of the beauties is it's an open network, so anyone can hop in and start compiling that list if that's something that they feel would be helpful to them and their peers. And there's many examples of similar situations. That's basically the entire network, right? It's all open source and it's all volunteer. So anybody is able to hop in if that's something that you feel is important or would be helpful. You're welcome to hop in and start compiling. That doesn't even really take any programming experience or anything like that. That's something that you could do to help the Bitcoin network without needing to be a tech geek.
Yeah. So, all right, one of my major concerns, and I don't know if there's going to be a way around this. I don't. And it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, really, other than whether or not you can get a hold of it. So one of my major concerns is when you look at, like, let's just take the January 6th riots, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that the FBI did is they got in touch with Bank of America, and they asked Bank of America to turn over all the financial records of anybody who made a purchase in Washington, D.C. on the date of January 6th, so that they could then investigate these people's finances, right? So if you're purchasing Bitcoin through your bank account, which I don't know any other way to do, it's the only way I've ever found to purchase Bitcoin is by utilizing my debit card or my credit card and buying it that way. If they put out these red flags on this, and they start flagging people that are purchasing and start freezing people's bank accounts and start making it more difficult for people that are making these purchases to survive, like, how can you get around that? Like, because this is, like, really ultimately what their goal is instead of coming at you with guns and kicking in your door and using the SWAT team to lock you away, they want to use the financial institutions to lock you in a cage and put you in a financial cage to where you can only utilize money on the approved services that they agree with. It is
arguably the exact reason that Bitcoin was invented in the first place.
Absolutely.
Recognizing this threat. Yeah.
Completely understand that. But how do you purchase Bitcoin? How do you are there ways to get a hold of it without utilizing these financial institutions and creating these flags?
Sure. Yeah. You can mine it, and you can work for it.
Can you be more specific about mining it?
Sure. Yeah, you can. So, and obviously the Bitcoin network is secured by miners. Well, I don't want to say obviously. I'm sure that some people don't, aren't Bitcoin, don't have a Bitcoin background, but every transaction that is confirmed into the ledger, the Bitcoin ledger, is confirmed by a process of mining, which is solving cryptographic puzzles that are increasingly or decreasingly difficult. I'll try and gloss over this in not super technical terms, but basically the miners are paid for their service,
Right.
of confirming the transaction. And right now they're paid with a subsidy, which is the initial monetary distribution schedule of Bitcoin. In other words, how it gets out into the ecosystem. And around 91 or 90 or 91% of all Bitcoins have been mined. So it's got a very low inflation rate now. I think it's like 6.25 per block. Which happens every 10 minutes. So they get the block subsidy for now, in addition to the transaction fees. So if you go mine a block, now that takes a lot of work. But if you go mine a block, you would get 6.25 Bitcoin plus whatever transaction fees are included in that block. So you can mine it and, get some hardware like an ASIC miner and then point it to a mining pool. And you could start to basically trade your power bill for Bitcoin. And that's pretty well, as long as you set it up right, that's pretty much KYC free. You're not really going to get flagged there. You can work for it. So if you know people with Bitcoin and they need work done, there's an obvious trade. And then if you have money and you know people with Bitcoin, you could always trade it privately with them. You're still using financial services, but it's not explicitly clear where it's going. In other words, what you're getting for that payment. Another process or another thing you could do is use BISC, which is a peer-to-peer trading platform that you have to run a full node and you have to run a local instance of BISC on your computer, but it basically hooks you up peer-to-peer with other people looking to trade. And you can trade with them that way. And again, it's not explicitly clear what it's going to. So you may or may not be flagged, or probably won't be flagged.
Are there any networks or like chat groups or whatever? I don't know how it all works, but where you can be in contact with people that own Bitcoin, and let's say you want to buy Bitcoin, instead of going through one of these processors, these services, you just buy it directly from the person, kind of like an
Sure.
eBay style setup.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of de facto groups like that. I mean, if you just plug yourself into the Bitcoin community, you're going to start finding people, especially if you know a lot of home miners. A lot of home miners have to offload Bitcoin in order to pay their power bill. So getting hooked in with them, there's always opportunities. There's a crowd like Rollo is part of Get on Zero crowd, and they don't hold, they hold $0 US dollars, and anytime they're trying to pay, like for instance, a power bill, they got to sell Bitcoin to pay that power bill. So getting hooked in with those people, you may be able to. I mean, there's going to have to be you're going to have to develop a relationship and probably a reputation, but there's some opportunity there to get it pretty privately and on demand.
Yeah, and do you think we don't have to worry about no Ross Ulbricht shit, do we?
Yeah, everybody needs to be worried about all that shit all the time. This is why you run your own node and you run it behind Tor, and you don't take outsized risks.
What is
now?
Tor?
None of this is illegal. Keep in mind. So,
right.
That not to say that they couldn't just come to your door and say you did something illegal. I mean, they can, drop a bag of Coke on your dead body, as a, So I mean, but none of this is illegal. So there is no, in strictly speaking, I guess there is no Ross Ulbricht worry here, in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I would take your security very seriously, because it could become illegal. And I don't think it will, to be fair, but it's always good to kind of circle the wagons.
I wonder if they're going to start treating Bitcoin miners like small business owners or corporations, and make them pay for permission to do it. You know what I'm saying? Kind of try to regulate that area of it. Like if you start a business, you have to like buy a business license and all this crap. I wonder if they're going to try to create a situation to where they have to have a license or something to be able to mine Bitcoin.
They may try. I think it'll be really difficult.
Do you?
Yeah. Because the way that I think people would begin spreading power around and make it very difficult to detect. So for example, like I run a home miner in the wintertime here, and I just don't run my central heating. I just run the miner. My electric bill looks identical, but I just mined Bitcoin rather than heated my house with a traditional heater. The ingenuity in the Bitcoin mining space and just the Bitcoin space in general is absolutely staggering. I mean, it is really, really some brilliant minds. I would bet every day of the week on Bitcoin miners figuring out ways to go undetectable over bureaucrats trying to regulate them.
That's something I talked to my buddy Ryan about a while back, was the advancements in technology and how fast technology is moving. A lot of times when I get on my show and I'm talking to people about ESG and, you know, all this stuff that's going on that I think that average people should be aware of and be watching, it sounds kind of doom and gloom. And I always try to give them some nuggets like, hey man, it's not all hopeless. Like there are things you can do. There are things that are happening. People are fighting back. You're not alone. And so that's part of the reason I want to have this conversation with you, because I'm sure that yet there are a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things with technology that we have no clue about, that is trying to hedge people against this tyrannical system that is kind of being driven down our throats.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, the Bitcoin space is wild. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. The thing, the speed with which open source software can develop is staggering. Every day is a white pill. It's just, I can't believe how fast things are moving, how fast people are joining the network, how fast people are joining the Lightning Network, which is the kind of the payments network that rides on top of Bitcoin. It's just really cool to be a part of. And I mean, to tell you how much time I've spent thinking about ESG in total before you messaged me, it'd be round to zero. I mean, because I just frankly don't care. It's just not part of my world, you know?
Right.
So it's just really, really refreshing. And it is a clear path out. Now it could fail, but the steps are laid out. And so, you know, it's kind of like you just kind of keep plugging away and keep crossing things off the to-do list. And it's, you know, it's a grill pill, man.
I've never looked at the Lightning Network. I know I've heard you and Rolo talk about it before, probably about a year or two ago. But I never took a look at it. But I have heard some people that weren't convinced by it. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of what their skepticism is? Because all I can gather is they say it's a scam. And I'm like, I don't understand what it is that's a scam. I don't know what you're talking about. So can you kind of break down what the skepticisms, like the honest, like criticisms are, the way the network works, and how people are working on it to make it better and less vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would need to know the specific criticisms. Most people got really butthurt about Lightning because Lightning came about because we needed to scale on another layer and not on the base layer. And that just, I think Lightning's success got a lot of people butthurt about that, particularly when their preferred scaling method failed in the marketplace.
Gotcha.
That's not to say that Bitcoin came about and is implemented perfectly or works perfectly yet, although it works unimaginably well for this early in the process, just as someone who uses it very frequently. I don't know why they would think it's a scam, other than maybe just, again, kind of ruffled feathers.
Them money.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if you bet against it, you probably lost a lot of money. Yeah. So, you know, I'd probably need something a little bit more specific, but, you know, basically Lightning, and here's the more important point, is that Lightning could fail and Bitcoin doesn't. And that's kind of the big advantage to scaling Bitcoin in layers, is that you retain that immutable base layer. And even if Lightning fails, we still they can build something else, and you can build an infinite number of second layer scaling solutions on top of Bitcoin. You know, if somebody doesn't like Lightning, they're free to start putting another scaling solution if they want to, and if people want to use that, they can use that. You know, we can look at something liquid as similar. Although I don't use that, I don't know that much about it. But yeah, Lightning basically works. So, you know, if you and I know that we exchange money pretty frequently, we might open a channel, and this we would open it with a Bitcoin transaction, and then the Lightning protocol would tell us how much Bitcoin is on each side of the channel. So if we start and you have a half a Bitcoin on your side and I have a half a Bitcoin on my side, and I say at the end of the first week, I owe you a tenth of a Bitcoin for whatever services rendered or whatever, I just send it over the Lightning Network. And the Lightning Network basically just updates the table, and it doesn't have to send a new transaction on the base layer. So you're not paying those fees. And then let's say the next week, I owe you again. I can send another 0.1. Then it updates it, and now it says 0.7 on your side and 0.3 on my side. And we can send an infinite number back and forth of updates to that table. But now what the cool part is that if you open a channel with someone else, then I also have access to that other person through you. I can route through you. So it starts to create this big web, like a mesh network. Of people that are interconnected with other people, and all of those hubs can collect routing fees. Now, those routing fees are highly competitive, so they're very, very low. They're driven down. You know, they're on the order of 1 sat basically. But you know, it incentivizes people to come online and route payments.
Right. So I'm trying to think of it like the best way to like kind of extrapolate this in my own head. So bringing it down to the base level of retail in physical stores that we operate in today's service, right? So basically what we're looking at is a situation to where you have customers walking around, interacting with each other, able to do commerce between themselves.
I guess that is yes. Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yeah. If I get where you're going with that. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you're not necessarily, it's almost like Facebook, right? Like somebody comments on your thread. Now other people can see that comment and can comment on that. They can become friends.
Kinda. I see what you're doing.
They can begin to interact, and interactions start to intermesh. You start creating online communities. Effect. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. I got it. I really wasn't really sure what Lightning was. I kind of got the idea that, like, let's say you and I want to do business together, that we would set up a single channel, kind of like we have right now on Zoom, and no one could interact with that channel, that it was our channel.
Well, we could set it up that way.
Oh, okay.
We could set it up that way if we wanted to. We could set up a private channel. No one could interact with it or know about it.
Now, wouldn't that be more secure than having the public channel where other people can see what's going on?
Yeah, it would be more private.
Yeah, it'd be more private, but I'm saying just secure in that, like, is it encrypted like end to end?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, but you would set it up over Tor.
Right. But if it's a public channel, it wouldn't be encrypted, would it?
Well, it would still be behind Tor.
And Tor that's what they call the dark web. Am I getting that?
Well,
right?
Yeah, it's access to it's the onion router network.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a method of communication. Yeah.
Dude, the only thing I can do on my computer is record podcasts, and I'm barely good at that.
Well, I'm not super technical myself, although I've made a lot of strides recently. But I would urge just kind of forget the Lightning Network for now, and get because just knowing how to receive, verify, and send and store Bitcoin is like step one, and that's really the most important step. That's 80% of your battle, and you can accomplish all of that by going to bitcoin.org and downloading Bitcoin Core, and set up a fully validating node. Then you've got a wallet. You can verify. You can send, receive without asking permission. I would recommend running it through Tor. You can set that up in the options and like the preferences, and then you might also want to prune the node because it'll want to store all the blockchain on your hard drive, which is at like 500 gigs right now. But if you prune it, it'll just ditch everything but the last 3 gigs or 5 gigs or whatever you decide, even though it will go through and verify all those previous transactions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's kind of what we talked about the last time you were on the show. The reason I'm kind of getting into these like more intricate side of things is because I'm more interested in how what is offered that Bitcoin can offer to allow people to operate outside of the network and not be punished for participating, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I don't know if, like, all right, so let's say you run Core and you have all this going on and you're buying Bitcoin. How would you buy Bitcoin? See, like, my thing is I would want to buy Bitcoin from individuals instead of going through.
Sure. And you can do that.
Right. Instead of going through Uphold or Edge or Coinbase or whatever, I would rather just like meet new people and buy Bitcoin directly from those people, because then maybe it's not getting traced what it is I'm actually purchasing. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Kind of like here in Texas, we're able to buy guns privately. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's like,
I would do that. I would highly recommend doing that. Yeah.
And would the Lightning Network be the best place to do that?
No, I think having the immediacy to validate it with Core, I would do it on Bitcoin for now, unless the fees got outrageous. But I don't think the fees are going to get outrageous anytime soon. I would just do it. I would just have Bitcoin Core, and if you wanted to, you could even just print out a QR code, take it with you, and send them the money. Show them the QR code, have them scan it. It'll send it to your Bitcoin Core node for verification, and it'll be there.
Did you ever look at that Liberty X app I had told you about a while back?
I don't know if I did.
That was the app I had told you about that you could find physical locations like Love's Truck Stops or Walgreens or whatever, and you could actually go buy Bitcoin from the cashier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think I did look at that. Yeah, because there's like Bitcoin ATMs all over the place. I don't know what kind of verification they require. Like, I don't know if you have to scan your license, like your ID. I just don't know. But yeah, I would investigate any option where you could buy it privately. It's always superior. Yeah,
I didn't know if you had ever bought from like a Walgreens or a Love's or whatever. I was just curious.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems really interesting. It's like, all right, like why is a truck stop like selling Bitcoin? That's weird.
Oh, well, dude, I mean, there's a huge remittance market back to Mexico, and that's why you see it in Bitcoin ATMs in a lot of bizarre places, in a lot of poor areas, is like especially Hispanic areas. And Jacob and I always note that around here is that you always see the Bitcoin sticker in gas stations in heavily Hispanic kind of poorer areas, is because they're sending Bitcoin back to Mexico.
Okay.
So they're some of the first adopters, which is really interesting. And
that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fee to send it isn't as much as it is to send cash. Like
it's like it's like a 0.5% of what it would be. You're talking about right now probably 20 cents to send it immediately to Mexico, whereas God knows how much you're going to send, and it's going to take days.
Yeah, no, I remember,
and people are going to know about it.
I remember whenever Beatrix was still in South Africa, like I sent her a bunch of money for when I made my trip over there, so the money was already in her account and we didn't have to worry about it. It was already converted and everything. And it was costing me at that time, and we're talking 2013, 2014. I think it's 2013 actually. And it was costing me like $29 to make that transfer from my bank account to her bank account.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, and if we would have had Bitcoin at the time and been able to do it that way, and I would have known even as much as I know now, which is barely anything, obviously. You're talking to me, you know this. That it would have saved us so much money. I would have been able to. We would have had a little bit more money for our vacation. Now we ended up having just enough to do a week and travel, and we never really paid attention to how much we were spending on shit, so it worked out because Well, the conversion ratio is like, it's like $1 is like 13 Rand. So,
Oh, okay. Good.
yeah, imagine imagine the look on my face the first time I'm at a burger joint and I see 50 next to the burger.
Oh,
I'm like,
geez.
what?
Yeah. What the hell?
$50? What the fuck is this? It's like, took my mind a second to process. Oh shit, it's 50 Rand. Okay, it's $5, you know. But
Yeah.
but so what do you see the political side making any moves that makes you a little bit nervous about the way that they're talking about regulating Bitcoin or the way they're attacking Bitcoin? I know the rhetoric around it is very, you know, amped up, and they're not liking it very much. Is there anything that concerns you that they're trying to do?
Yeah. I mean, no, not really. Again, I would kind of remember that there's two different perspectives. There's one that's, am I worried about the Bitcoin network? And then the second one is, am I worried about me as a participant in the Bitcoin network that has to physically occupy a space, you know, in the United States? I don't, and actually for right now, the answer to both is no, not really. I don't really see a good way for them to start regulating Bitcoin. I mean, not effectively, and so I kind of know that they're bluffing, and I just don't know what they're going to do. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no danger. Again, they could lash out at Bitcoin, at specific Bitcoiners, and that would be problematic. But I do still feel as though, you know, there are major institutions that have opted to start switching over to Bitcoin, or at least holding quite a bit of Bitcoin on balance sheets. And that includes life insurance companies, which are kind of the bedrock of this country in a lot of ways economically. And then big companies that hold a lot of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, if they, you know, if they have it, then I'm safe. But it does certainly lend a lot of credence to the fact that there's going to be some lobbying efforts to keep it at least legal. Now, it won't matter if they illegalize it, of course. It's not going to make any difference in my life. But I don't think so. I think they're a little bit hand-tied right now. And I don't know what their best move would be. And frankly, I think that they have so many issues on their hands with the legacy system and trying to keep that thing limping along that it's kind of they're taking their eye off the ball on Bitcoin in general.
Yeah, I kind of feel like because Elon Musk owns some Bitcoin. I know Tesla was supposed to have started taking Bitcoin for purchases. I don't know if they ever did. I just remembered seeing something a while back that they were talking about it. I kind of feel like they would be more concerned with the big money players, the big names, and not so much about people like you and me, right? That's kind of the way they would want to make an example out of somebody that the example would actually make a statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the end of the day, that, you know, I'm a small fish in this sea, so I'm not, you know, I'm there are going to be canaries in the coal mine that start to go before that should give me quite a bit of heads up if I need to like do something drastic.
Right. I do. I think you brought up the legacy system as opposed to the Bitcoin system and the way that they're trying to figure out and how it's kind of thrown them for a loop. I do kind of see a battle raging, and maybe not. Maybe you don't see it in Bitcoin or the crypto space as much, but it feels like there's kind of the old guard versus the new guard going on behind the scenes. And I think we got a little glimpse of this a couple of weeks ago when Elon Musk and Bill Gates were going back and forth and kind of talking shit about each other. It seems to me like there's this legacy guard that's just doing everything they can to hold on to their wealth and their power. And then there's this kind of new guard of like the Elon Musk's, Peter Thiel's type of people that have kind of more of they have more of their finger on the pulse of the future, and that's really what they're looking at. And they're more along the lines of the transhumanist movement and AI altogether, and they kind of understand how that's going to work and how that's going to affect all of our lives. And I'm wondering if you see any of that with Bitcoin, where it's kind of like this kind of legacy, kind of like BoomerCon style, trying to hold on to the value of the dollar and utilize or sell Bitcoin as something less than a currency?
What do you mean, like major legacy players trying to deride Bitcoin's value or something?
Well, no, I don't even know if it deriding the value, but just trying to. I've heard some people talk about Bitcoin is not a currency, right? And
Sure.
I always say that I use it as savings, right? A lot of people say it's an investment, and I'm wondering if this has something to do with people that are really invested in the dollar.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think that Bitcoin is what it is, regardless of whatever we classify it as, right? So it doesn't really matter what words we use because it at the end of the day, another block is going to get mined in 10 minutes. So
It's still just a bunch of ones and zeros.
yeah, it yeah, it's what it is.
It's information.
Is Bitcoin savings? For me, it is. Is Bitcoin currency? For me, it is. I mean, is it for everyone? The very honest answer is I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So, it's like I want people in my economic network, people that I trade with, to come on board. But outside of that, I mean, the more people that come on board, the more powerful the network becomes. So yeah, like, yes, I do want that, but I think that there are a lot of people that don't want Bitcoin to succeed. Ironically, I think there's a lot of people in the kind of like liberty area of the universe that don't want it to succeed because it kind of demolishes their pet projects and the things that they may want to focus on in the liberty community that will no longer be valid or no longer be a threat because Bitcoin's kind of just short circuited it, and I think that's the bulk of it. And there's a lot of dedicated gold guys out there. Of course, I used to be a gold guy a long time ago, but and I get that too. It's the new kid on the block, and of course this, magic internet money could never work. It's not a currency. It's not a money, right?
Yeah, I've never been one to believe in putting all your eggs in one basket. Like I was always raised to believe that, and so I have a hard time like just buying all in 100% to Bitcoin, just like I would have a hard time buying in 100% to gold or silver. I think that, I think the first thing any like honest person should do to save the value of their money, and I'll just be honest with the way I look at it, is the first thing you should do is buy land. I mean, that's gonna hold value just as well, if not better, than anything else in this world. Because if everything goes to shit and you can't buy anything, like if you have land, you can grow shit and you can have room for things and you can do things. And so I'm very much on that kind of mindset, which may be old timey, but that's just the way I am. But yeah, I definitely think people should own crypto. I still haven't figured out why Bitcoin is better than all the other cryptos, especially all the other branches of Bitcoin. That all confuses me. You got Bitcoin Cash, you got Bitcoin Gold, you got Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, and it's like, okay, how many times? It's almost like they've proven that just because we capped it doesn't mean we can't inflate it. We'll just inflate it in different ways and create branches off of it and make as much of it as we want, just in different areas. It's really kind of odd to me to watch what's going on with that.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'll offer my thoughts on the first point on land, and I have land and I like land. But when you say, if shit hits the fan, I can at least grow stuff on it and do that. Well, yeah, you can, unless the situation is politically unstable and somebody takes it from you. So there is a risk with land that doesn't exist to the same extent with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is incredibly easy to defend. It is very asymmetric. You can defend it far, far easier than big swaths of land or even small areas of land, particularly if you're in a politically hostile environment. And not only that, but Bitcoin's mobile. You can you can transport it if things get bad. Land, not so much. That is not to say I am a
I got a
land
shovel.
hater. Yeah, right. So I'm not a land hater. I am a land haver, and I like land. But those are things to keep in mind. Is that the actual shit hits the fan asset that I would like to have is Bitcoin, because it's ultimately mobile and easy to defend.
Right.
Land
Can I ask you
is
about that
neither.
real quick? Like
Yeah.
just real quick. All right. So with the cost of energy, and especially this war on fossil fuels and the way that things are going with that, you don't have any concern, because they're talking about like scheduled blackouts and brownouts and all this shit. And I know a little bit about how that works, because Beatrix being from South Africa, they did that in South Africa. They would give you no warning. They just shut shit down. It would just, you'd be without electricity for like 2 days or whatever. And
Yeah.
you'd have no say in it. So that didn't concern you any when it comes to Bitcoin?
No, and actually, I think that if anything, that could divert more energy towards Bitcoin, because as an energy provider, do you want to be in a politically unstable area where you're told who you can and cannot serve, or do you want to sell to the buyer of last resort, which are Bitcoin miners, and they're ultimately mobile? You don't have to be anywhere; you just need to have an internet connection, and you can accomplish that with satellite. So the short answer is no, not at all. I don't think that will. Now, will that squeeze a lot of miners? Yeah, you're seeing that happen right now, because the cost of power is going up in certain areas where they're deployed, and even in areas where the war isn't happening. It does ripple through the energy markets. But no, this is also part of the beauty of the difficulty adjustment within Bitcoin, and that is that if miners have to go offline due to whatever it may be, for example, when China illegalized mining last year, or if like, let's just say there was a bunch of mining going on in Ukraine that had to shut off because of a proxy war there. You just need to slog through to the next difficulty adjustment, which happens every roughly 2 weeks, and then the difficulty will adjust downwards or upwards based on how many miners are still online, and then you resume your 10-minute targeted 10-minute block time. So the network doesn't really, it makes the network quite resilient in that way.
Do you think they're trying
Go
to
ahead.
push all the miners to like third world countries or something, like get it out of like the first world countries?
Oh, I honestly, I don't know that they have a plan, because there is, and this is actually one of the more interesting threads to pull on in terms of game theory and geopolitical game theory. I did like 2 episodes with Rollo on this, and it's really fascinating, because here's kind of the conundrum, right? Is Bitcoin itself threatens your national currency, but if other countries pursue Bitcoin, they may become wealthy and you may become less wealthy. And if you don't have access to Bitcoin, then you're going to be very, very poor. So you enter this damned if you do, damned if you don't arrangement, where it's like, you don't want Bitcoin in your country because you want to control your citizens, but you want Bitcoin in your country because ultimately the whole ship goes down if everybody else kind of off ramps this fiat scam and gets on to Bitcoin. And so one of the things that is interesting to watch is how countries treat miners, because mining is a way to obtain Bitcoin. So you see countries that want to ban Bitcoin and they illegalize mining, and then the miners leave, and then they're probably thinking, oh shit, we just had people that we could have sent SWAT teams in to capture the miners, and we just illegalized it, and they just peacefully left, and now we have no miners left here that we can capture. So
it's kind of like that wealth fleeing idea, where if you raise corporate taxes so much, the wealth just flees the area.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I can't tell you what every country's thinking, but what I would be thinking in a game theory scenario is I want miners there, and then I want to take them when the time is appropriate, or try to, and obviously that won't affect the Bitcoin network. It will just affect who has access to Bitcoin coming from mining, they would try to make it, I guess those in power, if that's the way that you're thinking. But but then you see countries trying to attract miners, and states trying to attract miners. Texas, for example, is trying to attract miners, and they're offering all sorts of incentives. And I think the country of Kazakhstan was trying to attract miners, and Georgia was trying to attract miners, and Paraguay is trying to attract miners. And you always have to be thinking, well, that could absolutely be for nefarious ends, but you're going to run into another game theory problem down the line, is that the government probably doesn't want to run the miners, so they're going to maybe try to tax them or so. I don't know, but like, so you enter this whole game theory situation. But it's interesting because you have all nation states that are essentially competing with each other against the ultimately most scarce asset ever known.
Yeah.
So and the machinery to access it, or to access newly minted or transferred via transaction fee Bitcoin.
Yeah.
In a permissionless way, no less. You
Right.
don't have to ask. And that's probably one of the more important things, is when you look at what happened with Russia and the United States freezing their foreign exchange reserves. If you are mining Bitcoin, you're not having to ask anybody permission to obtain it. That's just coming from the network. You're not having to go to a third party. You're just mining it, and it's coming straight to your permissionless, self-hosted private wallet where you control the keys. Yeah. So does Russia now say, ooh, maybe we do want some Bitcoin miners? They may be thinking that. I don't know. I can't tell you what they're thinking, but it's a pretty interesting geopolitical arrangement.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if these people aren't so arrogant after 100 years of the Federal Reserve that they just like think that, oh yeah, like Bitcoin ain't got shit on us, so we'll just let it do what it's going to do.
It's highly possible.
And by the time they open their eyes to see the threat that's right in front of them, it's going to be too late.
It seems unfathomable, but it is possible. And so, and keep in mind also, several people within that organization may be thinking different things. Some people may be very worried about it, but they're not able to do anything, and some people may not be very worried about it, and other people, so who knows? That's kind of the madness of bureaucracy, right? Like, is their hands are tied, and Bitcoin is completely open source, permissionless network where anyone can contribute at any time, and it's ultimately verified by all the users of the network. It's pretty resilient, and it advances quickly versus a traditional nation state, which is can respond quickly to certain threats, but typically doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I kind of veered us off before you got to the whole branching off of Bitcoins into 5,000 different coins, whatever the hell is going on. Like, so can you explain to us like a little bit of what's going on there, which Bitcoin you should be looking at? Because I've heard some people say buy BTC. I've heard some people say buy BTS. Like, I've heard all kinds of stuff. Like, and I just don't even know how to gauge what anybody's talking about with this stuff.
Yeah. So, I'm a Bitcoiner, so, I will always recommend Bitcoin. I think that everything else is not worth your time. I'm sure there are people listening to that disagree, and I don't care. I'm going to continue to use Bitcoin. The reason is that I think it's the best money that's ever been invented, and I think the security model around it. So basically, my thesis with Bitcoin is a combination of two things, and this is why I am, own as much as I possibly can at any given time, and that is Thier's law in combination with the Bitcoin security model. And so, Thier's law is ultimately that good money will drive out bad if there are no legal tender laws, which then you ask, are there legal tender laws? Well, of course there are. So that's where the Bitcoin security model comes in, and the model surrounding your network has to be secure enough to ensure that there can be no legal tender laws enforced on your network. And I'm not convinced anything else is robust or secure enough to offer that as a service. And I think Bitcoin probably only became robust enough to offer that I'm sure it's debatable, but at least in the ASIC era, 2013, 2014, I think prior to that, it was probably very vulnerable to attack. It was just very small on the radar. There just isn't anything that's nearly as secure as Bitcoin, period. And the nature of network effects, like the thing that you were talking about with Facebook, and this guy is connected to this guy, and now this guy is connected to this guy. The nature of network effects is such that probably one money is going to capture this whole thing. Why would I have, if you ask, why would I have the dollar? Well, everybody else around me has a dollar, right? Like, that's how I pay my bills, right? And it's the same principle. It's just that the security model around Bitcoin is much more robust than any fiat currency currently, in my opinion. And the security model around the consensus rules of Bitcoin, the assurance that 21 million Bitcoins will be the cap so that it will be ultimately non-inflationary, which is very important for Austrians, or at least me. The assurances behind that are much greater than any other coin. I mean, but by orders of magnitude. And you see these coins fork off and they change consensus rules. That's what causes the fork, is they've changed a consensus rule. Well, if they've changed a consensus rule, what's to say they're not going to change another one? What if they just double the coin supply? Well, they just diluted my ownership by half. So, it's a combination there. And so, to get back to Thier's law plus security model, if tomorrow there are more users of the network because of Thier's law, or because of the game theory elements that cause us to observe Thier's law, and then the next day there are more users, and the next day there are more users, and all the while the security model is going to keep it safe from attack, what is the end? What is the end result? And that's my theory, is that it will ultimately become global money.
That's interesting, because that reminds me of something I was reading a while back. I can't remember exactly what book it was, man. I read all the time, so it's like, forgive me for that. But this guy had said that the way the internet's set up, it's set up so that companies grow exponentially, and kind of people flood there. So you think about like why everybody uses Facebook and not everybody uses something like Minds, right? And it's because everybody is already at Facebook.
Right.
And so you have to be at Facebook if you want to be in contact with everybody you know. It's like, I have a Facebook, I don't use it. But my wife, she uses her Facebook. Why does she use her Facebook? Because all her family that is spread out around the world, in New Zealand and the UK and in South Africa, are on Facebook. And so that's the easiest place for her to keep in touch with them. So it becomes it becomes necessity by convenience almost.
Right.
Yeah. And so, can we talk about the price for a minute? Like, what's going on? Like, I just looked today. I don't know what it's at this moment, but I looked earlier today and it was like 19,300 per Bitcoin. I was like, wow, man, it's gone down a ton. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
What's happening with the Bitcoin? I've heard some people like say that, oh, it's being manipulated. I'm like, I'm not sure how they would manipulate it. Maybe it is. I don't know. So,
I mean, it always could be manipulated. The prices at third-party exchanges always could be manipulated. But I think the large sum of what is happening here is that because Bitcoin is a pretty much completely free market, the same bad habits from fiat land get translated over into Bitcoin world, but people think they can get away with it in the same way they can in fiat land, and they can't. So when you look at a lot of the companies that are now going bust, these Three Arrows and maybe BlockFi and like a couple other ones, what a lot of people were doing was basically taking Bitcoin from users and promising a yield, which of course Bitcoin doesn't have a yield. That's why it's not an investment. It's just savings. So where were they getting the yield? Well, in brief, they were lending it out to probably a lot of different sources, but a lot, I think, as liquidity for market makers in trading, leveraged trading schemes, among many, many other things. So basically what they were trying to do was sort of like the rehypothecation that you see in fiat world. But in fiat world, you get bailed out. In Bitcoin world, you don't. And so when there was a hiccup and the price got forced down, and sometimes it's probably big time Bitcoin whales that see all of this leverage in the system, and they say, if I can put enough sell pressure on Bitcoin with X amount of my stack, I can push it down to the point where it liquidates the first guy, right? And this is what's called a long squeeze, and then he's going to have to liquidate all of his holdings because he's underwater, which means he has to sell all of his Bitcoins. And that's going to put sell pressure on the next guy and liquidate, a cascade of liquidations. And then the whale says, okay, now I can come in and buy it half the price or a third the price because I just risked X amount of my stack to just flush out all of this leverage.
Hmm.
I think some variation of that happened. What exactly happened, I don't know, nor do I care. But basically, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin corrects very much in real time, and it punishes bad behavior. And I think that is what happened. And you saw 4 or 5 of these dubious lending companies that promised, I don't even know what yield they were promising, but it's insane. It would be like me saying, if you give me an ounce of gold, I'll give you, a gram of gold. I'll hold it perfectly safely and give you a gram of gold a month. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Gold doesn't have yield.
Right.
So anyway, a number of these companies, I just saw one filed Chapter 11. They basically just got wiped out. Now, there are, anytime the price swings down sharply, you always kind of are looking at the miners, because a lot of miners try to hold as much as they can, which makes sense, right? Because over time, Bitcoin has shown that it does increase in value.
Oh yeah, definitely,
in terms of dollars. But they try to hold Bitcoin, and sometimes they'll be buying miners at higher prices than they probably should be, because the market gets excited and people get greedy. And then when you get an extended down period like this, you'll start to see miners have to capitulate as well. And either that could include selling Bitcoin reserves that they were hoping to hold through the bear market to get through to the other side. It could even be selling mining equipment. And if you are a miner, if you're a home miner, it's a pretty exciting time, because if you look at the market, mining equipment is, half the price it was last year. So, that indicates to me that a lot of there's a lot of supply, excess supply in the mining equipment markets. So, that's ultimately, Bitcoin is volatile. It immediately punishes bad act, or not immediately, but in relative to legacy world that we're used to, where people just get behind, under the table handouts and bailouts to keep them alive. Nope, you just get wiped out in a matter of days in Bitcoin world.
Yeah, I think the only thing about it that shocked me is at the rate of the dollar inflation. I was like, should it be dropping so much? It's not even, it doesn't even seem to be pacing with inflation in any way. And so I was like, well, why is the dollar devalued by 9.1% this last month, but Bitcoin's gone down, a couple of $1,000s or whatever. So it was something that it's not a cause for concern, because I'm not going to sell low, because I think 19,000 is what I bought my first Bitcoin at. So it's like, I'm not going to just go sell it. But I look at it and I'm like, that didn't make sense. Bitcoin's on sale. Why? And it's like, all right.
Yeah. A lot of it is, it kind of does its own thing. And I've kind of stopped trying to say, well, this is why this and this is why that.
Yeah.
Although this particular episode was fairly clear, because all these companies just had to file bankruptcy. So it was pretty much published. So like that caused a glut of Bitcoin to be on the markets. But the other thing too to remember is that the Bitcoin price in dollars is reflective of the Bitcoin price of dollars of about 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. I think only like 5 to 10% of coins are on exchanges. Everybody else is holding them. They don't even think it's worth it to have on an exchange, because they value it so much higher than what those traders happen to value it at any given time. So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, what is it listed on Coinbase? Who gives a shit? I don't plan on ever selling anyway, so it doesn't matter to me. I'm a net buyer all the time. So
right.
Low price is good.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was odd. I looked at it today, because I heard yesterday that the numbers were in, and it was like inflation was at 9.1% over the last month. And I was like, oh, well, let me look at Bitcoin. And I was like, why is it down? That's odd. 'Cause I don't even look at the cost of Bitcoin very often. I just, every once in a while, I'll just log in just to look and see what's going on, as far as what the cost is. So I don't pay that close of attention to it. But it did strike me as odd, like that it was at 19,000 today, and I was like, that's weird.
For sure. Yeah, you would expect. I mean, just.
But I didn't know about those companies going bankrupt either.
It was such a huge market event that anything else happening, was not relevant compared to
Gotcha.
that. It just flooded the market with so many Bitcoins which is good, right? Because those Bitcoins were in the hands of people who didn't respect them. And
Yeah, because
now
I
they're
get
going
paid
to,
tomorrow.
yeah, and now they're shifting to people who do respect them, and that builds the foundation for the next bull run. So that's
Right.
you know, there you
Right.
go.
Fair enough. All right, man. Well, I mean, I don't want to like flood everybody with every bit of information you have on Bitcoin because like I couldn't keep up, let alone expecting my listeners to keep up. But we've been going an hour. I think that's a good amount of information for this time. We're definitely gonna have to get you back on again to do this again.
Sure.
And just keep digging in a little bit at a time, man, so everybody can understand what's going on. But plug anything you got to plug. Except for that timeline Earth thing you do, like I don't want to hear about it.
The only thing I want to plug, the only thing I got to plug is swing on by and listen to our show, me and Bird and Aaron and Paz, Timeline Earth. That's all I got, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, and it's Bitcoin Core is at bitcoincore.com. How do you find
it's
that?
Bitcoin. You can get it on a number of places, but bitcoin.org.
Bitcoin.org.
Not bitcoin.com.
Gotcha.
Bitcoin.org.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, brother. It was great talking to you, man. Can't wait to see you next year at Childeberg, and we'll chat again.
Likewise, man. Thanks.
All right.
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn out stories, same old lines. They're all pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the things that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they all gather in the rallies and they chant their names, on goddamn well that it's all gonna be the same. Just 4 more years of war and taxes, 4 more years of them grinding down their axes. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken